everybody. Happy time zone, and welcome to the very first Fantastic Pixel Castle dev stream of our in development MMO, Ghost. I am so happy to be here today and to be joined by some of my fantastic coworkers. Really quickly, before we go through and introduce everyone, I just wanted to talk about why we're doing this. So, one of our studio values is partner with players, and we're really excited to kind of bring an in development MMO to people who have never had the chance to see behind the scenes this early before. So as we moved out of prototype and into pre-production, we thought, well, still images and the blog posts are fun, but what if we actually showed the game live? Now that's something that might sound a little scary, but it's also something that we find pretty thrilling. We're excited
Could
to be here
possibly go
today.
wrong, Faye?
What could possibly go wrong? It's only a totally in development game that occasionally crashes and, might be a little bit skippy. We're going to have a good time. All right. So, that all being said, hi, my name is Faye. I am your friendly neighborhood community manager, and I am joined by three of my amazing coworkers. Um, Greg. I'm going to gesture this way. Greg or Ghost Crawler. And if you've watched our podcast, you've met Christina, our executive producer, but you may not have met our third guest today. So, hi, Graham. How you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks, Faye. Yeah, really excited to be here. I'm Graham. I'm a principal game designer here at FPC. In a former life, I worked on World of Warcraft as a systems designer, doing combat and rewards and progression sorts of things, but feeling really lucky to be able to be our Blue Zone lead designer and walk you through some of the cool stuff we've been making today.
Uh, Awesome. Thank you. So, tell us a little bit about the Witchwood Blue Zone as we've been envisioning it. And we do actually have, this is something I'm very excited. Before we get into the game, we do actually have some unreleased art that we're going to show of what the Blue Zone looks like. So why don't we get into that now? And we can kind of talk about what the Witchwood is, what we're envisioning, and why we started with the Witchwood for our Blue Zones. This is one of the first real kind of concept pieces that we have from one of our concept artists who's absolutely amazing. And yeah, why don't you tell us a little bit, Greg or Christina or Graham? Why don't you tell us a little bit about like what the what the point of the Witchwood is supposed to be? What are we hoping for with this particular biome?
If you think about the world we're making for Ghost, the fiction is there was a planet that, for reasons you'll discover someday, blew up, and now it's lots of shards floating around in this big kind of whirlpool we call the Drift. And when you visit a shard, you get a sense of like the part of the original world that it came from. So some places might be tropical rainforest, other places might be, a spooky desert or something like that. The Witchwood is our medieval forest because every RPG needs some kind of medieval forest. But we didn't. We still wanted to have like some. We didn't want it to be too generic. So our biggest inspiration are like the boreal forests of Northern Europe. So you think of places like Poland, Russia, Lithuania, with lots of pine trees, um, dark secrets inside. Like you always feel a little bit like a trespasser there, like you don't belong. Doesn't mean everything out there is going to hunt you down and kill you, although plenty of things will. But there's secrets, there's mysteries, there's fey folk, there's waterfalls and fireflies. Um, I've described it before as like it's one part Midsummer Night's Dream and one part Baba Yaga.
All right, I think this one we've shown before. This is kind of our what we call the golden hour of Witchwood, and it's going more from like concept into almost a livable biome. You can start to see how this is going to translate itself really well into a game.
Yeah, this one's like
And
more at
then,
the gameplay level view, and obviously it's
yeah.
not actual in-game art, but it helps to give us a sense of what players would see while they're adventuring.
Mhm.
And like it's super inspirational to have these images, especially once they start getting kind of more ground level and detailed like this, because we look at elements of it and go, okay, there's these purple fireflies everywhere. What does that mean? Is that just something ambient, or is that like can can you catch those and do something with them? Do they cause an effect when you run near them? What are all these, ruins that you're discovering, and what might you find there? What might you do there? So for the design side, we love these concepts. They're super helpful.
And you talked a lot about like exploring and discovering. That's something that I've really been enjoying as we kind of think about blue zones and this smaller group experience that we want to have. And we want to encourage people to kind of go digging throughout the world. So having art like this or like this, right, makes us think, oh, that's exciting. I want to go look at that. Yeah. We're getting comments in the chat about the trees, especially, and how they're sort of pulling up the broken environment. It's really interesting to see how this starts to come to life. I can't honestly, y'all, I can't wait for you to see this in game. We are actually going to show you in the game today what this looks like, which is pretty exciting. So Baba Yaga meets Midsummer Night's Dream with like a dash of, I don't know, Australian wildlife to kind of get that thrilling danger hit.
Everything wants to kill you or poison you.
Like a little bit, right?
I also like thinking of the Witchwood, like the forest there has some kind of its own energy, like it has its own history and mind and like its own purpose that might be good for you, it might be bad for you. It depends on how it's feeling that day.
That's a really interesting idea. It kind of brings back to mind like Gothic novels where the house is a character, the environment's a character in and of itself. I love that. Shout out
There's a
to
rich history to the Witchwood, like the idea of mystery and players kind of discovering what happened in the past because that's going to impact the future is a big theme for our game. So we're not just hand waving about like, oh, let's put in some cool stuff and don't explain it. Like we have reasons for the, you know, why you encounter certain types of creatures and why the Witchwood looks the way it does.
Why
One
are
of
the
the things
trees
I'm
purple?
Yeah, why are the trees purple? Actually, that's a good question. One of the things I'm seeing in the chat are, you know, some people are saying, I want to build a house in that tree, which is a very me response as well. It's what I do when I get into Minecraft. It's what I do anywhere I can. Like, I like to build into the environment rather than separate from it. But then we have some people in the chat saying, "Ooh, purple in trees, interesting, mysterious, magical. Purple on ground, corrupted, swamp, bad, undeath." Right? Like I do think it's so interesting the way that color kind of starts to play into the language of how we communicate our environments. So that's really, really exciting. This one is amazing. This one, I'm really happy that we had this concept piece. As you'll see, I think this one is really starting to look a lot like what our blue zones are actually looking like in game right now, which is very, very cool. So,
Trying to strike a good balance between a place that you want to spend a lot of time in and something that still looks like fantastic and potentially dangerous. I know when you know, Graham and I both worked on World of Warcraft, and we learned that zones that were like really oppressive with like corruption everywhere and dark skies, like they can feel epic, but they're almost exhausting to spend time in. I'm trying to strike the balance of all of our zones will be beautiful. We're never going to like set out to make an ugly zone. And then the question is, how do we get that like sense of danger in there without making everything feel like corrupt all the time?
yeah. I don't know. I feel like this plant here actively conveys danger to me. I do not want to go near this personally at all. The
It's
fact
too many
that there's
teeth. Just too many.
there's a lot of teeth for a plant actually. And there's a little human-sized silhouette there for size reference. I think I would like to stay away from something like this. Does this plant and the sort of environment art that we're starting to look at here and the way that we're taking concepts from the concept art and starting to make them fit into the game, does this sort of accurately kind of hit that mysterious danger feeling? How are you feeling about the plant with teeth, Greg?
Like, players are going to hate hearing this, but I have a very soft spot for mimics because I think nothing else kind of conveys the element of exploration while staying on your toes. You see a treasure chest, and you're like, well, you know, am I going to get treasure? Or am I going to get chewed on? So we're experimenting with mimics, and that may not even be our final name for them, but you know what I'm talking about. In the Witchwood, which is so heavily vegetated, maybe a lot of the mimics hide, you know, disguise themselves as trees or wood or things like that. And people who've played our playtest, you know that some of the chests are actually not chests. Sorry, not sorry.
I think if anything comes out of this particular stream, some of my favorite monsters are mimics. Quoth Ghostcrawler is going to be the clip that goes everywhere. I hope that's true, at least.
Everything from
So
Dungeons and
we
Dragons
also
to Dark Souls loves mimics. It's a good monster.
I just want there to be friendly mimics too. Does like every mimic have to bite? I don't know.
I think this was
Very tough.
Christina's idea of we can have little mimics that are more like treasure goblins, where they're not going to fight; they're just going to run away, and you still want to like maybe don't kill them, but maybe at least like get their treasure before they escape.
And imagine
Yeah.
there's one special little mimic that like for some reason just loves the heroes and like follows them around and is like, I just want to be a friend, right?
As long as you feed it a piece of gold every once in a
Exactly,
while, I think,
exactly.
you know?
It's like a little extra backpack, a little extra inventory space, but also a pet.
But it
I
bites.
love that idea.
Even though we just talked about mimics, which are certainly not an original FPC creation, one of the things we're going for with our game is to make almost all of the creatures unique to our IP, but not like
Yeah.
weird and unapproachable. We will have things that kind of fit the niche of orc or mind flayer or skeleton. So here are some like monster concepts. In fact, I think these are all real monsters we're putting in the game.
Oh, even this horrific bird friend here in
Yeah,
the
yeah, that
bottom
is
middle who's just staring. Oh
Oh,
that
we
is our
want a
gosh.
owl
mimic pet,
beast.
but not a
Yeah,
horrific bird pet. Okay, Faye.
that one is not
No,
friendly and will not be a pet. It's the horrible owl beast that you would hear screeching from a while away, and everything in the Witchwood is pretty scared of the owl beast.
yeah. I am also scared of the owl beast. Fun
Good, we're
fact.
doing our
I'm
job.
just looking at this. I feel like he doesn't blink. Do you know what I mean? I
They're
feel like these creatures just don't. They just stare.
they're big too.
And
It's hard to get the scale, but this is a monster to be reckoned with.
yeah, clearly. But we also have these sort of round toad friends who might look different based on, I don't know, what part of the Witchwood they live in. So you've got like tree toads, flower toads. This sort of looks like a pine cone toad, maybe. Um, One of the things that I love about the concept art is the way that our artists are sort of creating these layouts and then writing creature notes like they're botanists or biologists exploring. These are like in character notes that I think are really wonderful, and it helps to breathe a sense of life into the game for me at least when I think about talking about the game to people.
You can see
Um,
particularly for the toad and the cat
oh,
that
yeah,
one of the things
go
we go
back.
for with the Witchwood is the plants, the trees are such a powerful influence that even the animals have a lot of tree-like aspects. So our panther has a bark shell on it, and the frog looks like it could be part plant. And I think the next screen you showed something with a little bit of
Yeah.
like fly trap vibe there.
The carnivorous plant bug, flying lizard. I love this. I think this is incredible. I will
These
say
are
my
cute. These are the kind of things that
yeah,
would be more of like ambient wildlife, not something that jumps out and attacks you.
sure. Well, I mean, this cat with the rattling tail that might jump out and attack you a little bit. Who knows, right?
It does say to
I
scare
do
away bigger
love,
predators, so maybe the cat is like all
yeah.
bark and no bite.
Oh, that's really funny. I love
Battle
that
cat.
idea. I do think my favorite creature concept we've had so far is this sort of crystal gem lizard guy. He is so ugly cute to me. Like he looks like a real thing. And I love the expression on his face too. This is no thoughts, pure vibes, like not a single brain cell in this creature, and I love him so much. So I'm excited to see things like this start to come to life in the game.
Worth mentioning, like, we can't 100% promise every one of these creatures is going to make it in the game, but our
Yeah.
intention was to show you things that we're actively working on. This isn't just like,
Yeah.
random pie in the sky stuff. These are deliberate, like, we need a list of creatures
Mhm.
to put in the game, and these are the ones we've come up with so far. And some of them
Yeah.
are in the game and modeled and everything.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of an important note about showing off a game this early. A lot of this isn't final, and even if something we think of as, final right now, there may be changes to it in the future. So on the one hand, you brought up Game of Thrones, right? Don't get attached to any of your favorite characters. We don't know who's going to last to the end. But also, that's the fun part of working on a game like this is getting to see concepts grow, and there's this really cool through line between the concept art, the very like beautiful watercolor concept art by our concept artist Maisie that we showed at the beginning, and what you're going to see in the game in the actual build. And typically people don't get to see that until, after the game is out and somebody releases an art book, right? So that's why we're really excited to show it off now.
And it's one of the fun parts of showing it so early is like getting the player reaction, the audience reaction of, okay, yeah, we have a bunch of cute stuff on here. If everyone loves Crystal No Thoughts Lizard, then maybe we explore that one earlier because it like clearly is resonating with our players.
Partner with players. Part of why we're doing this. It's all of why we're doing this. All right, so this is Ghost in February 2024, so a little over a year ago.
I would buy that game. That looks amazing.
I mean, I would call this like MMO development simulator if this was a game, right? Fun fact, that is an indie game that actually does exist, which I think is amazing. I have not played it yet, but it is on my list. Here is Ghost, August of 2024. This is sort of right before we started playtesting, right before we started putting people in the game to take a look at, is what we're building fundamentally fun? Do we know we're moving in the right direction? So I think this is pretty similar to what a lot of people have seen in our blog posts. That all being said, this is a still shot of where the game is now. And I can see the purple in the trees, the through line from the concept art here. I think this is incredible for a year of existence.
Getting there, I would say this doesn't have the dark, spooky forest vibe yet, and that's simply because we're not yet at a point where we can put enough trees on the map without hurting performance really well, but we will get there.
We will get there. Well, you know what? A still image is fun, but we did say we were going to show people the actual game. So do we want to do that? Do we want to head into the game?
Let's do it.
Chat, do you want to see the game?
Please don't crash on live stream.
Please don't crash on live stream.
But if it does, we'll get it back up and running quickly.
Yes.
This is the Witchwood, and proving that we're live.
So just
proving that we're
this
live.
Is not it's not a film. This is the game.
Yeah, we can. I don't know. We can go up. We can go down. We can control it.
Yeah.
So the structure in the foreground is a prototype skyship. It's important to us that ghosts not feel like you're jumping through portals into shards all the time. So you actually get on a ship and fly to the different shards. And we think there's a really exciting gameplay moment. As you approach a shard, you can kind of look out and maybe get a sense, it's like your sneak peek of what you're going to deal with. You might see some stuff in the distance and tell your friends, oh, but let's go make sure to check that out. Maybe you see a dragon flying and okay, we're going to have dragons on this map and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I love loading into these to test them. We've hit a point with the development of the Witchwood where I just kind of want to stand and take screenshots of things. Also, this skyship looks incredible. I love how it fits really well, I think, with the idea of these floating shards throughout space. I'm excited. I'm excited for all of the
magical, of course. And the vibe we were going for is like part sailing ship, part airplane, and part organic. Hopefully, part of our feature is that players will be able to own their own skyship and kit it out the way they want and name it, and maybe even have an NPC crew and that sort of thing. But its real purpose is conveyance to like get you to the next adventure. We're not like Assassin's Creed, Black Flag, naval combat simulator.
Right.
Not yet. Maybe in 10 years, Greg.
Expansion 4.
Yeah.
Expansion 4. You can have airship battles in space.
Obviously, the airship is not like fully textured or anything. It's fairly fresh into the build.
Yeah, but it is. I still think it looks really good. I don't know. So we have a question from the chat. As Graham, why don't you drive us around and take us on a little bit of a
look, see some
kind
rooms.
of like a nature monorail drive through the Witchwood here. But the question is this area the most further along than other areas? In terms of biome, yes, this is the one that we've decided to focus on for prototype and for at least right now in pre-production to help us sort of determine how we want to build biomes, how we want to build blue zones. And I know that Greg and Christina and Graham have a lot more to talk about that than me. So I'm going to chaotically just hand it to them and let them grab the microphone. Actually,
Our
Christina,
hope
can
is
you
that
tell
we
us?
launch with 3 distinct biomes. The Witchwood would be one.
Yeah.
We're also working on a tropical Hawaiian/Caribbean with volcanoes series of islands that we call Manta Isles because there are flying manta rays. And then the third one we're working on is the Tempest Desert, which is a desert because RPGs have to have deserts.
Mm-hmm.
And the Tempest Desert has storms all the time, but the storms are actually good because they create resources and they change the landscape. So our goal is that when you see a storm, you run towards it instead of fleeing from it.
Yeah,
But today we're here to talk about the Witchwood.
that's true. Yeah. So we did have a question from YouTube. Is Ghost going to be open world like WoW? And I know we have focused a lot on blue zones, and you mentioned this a little bit in a podcast in the past, Greg, but are that open world sort of overworld feeling is actually going to come from a totally different part of the game, right?
Now we're focusing on blue zones because that is our major innovation and it will be the hardest part to deliver on. We will also
Mhm.
have lots of what we call red zones, which are more traditional MMO zones where you will go in solo or in a group. There will be lots of other players around. We're hoping for 100-ish, and then there'll be a lot of activities that are helpful to have big groups, such as the easiest to imagine is a large kind of raid boss stomping around that you all need to kill. But there could be a lot of other things as well, like you have to get together with a certain number of players to summon something, or you need to collect a certain number of resources before the door unlocks, things like that. We really want to make
Yeah.
the red zones these big multiplayer playgrounds because we know players are going to spend so much time in blue zones in smaller groups. We really want the red zones to feel epic in the number of players you'll see.
Yeah. And I think there was this idea that our red zones are just going to be raids, and that is one
Oh.
aspect of red zones are
Yeah, when we
raid
made the
spots.
gameplay video in December, it was a raid. It was like you all run in and fight a raid boss, which that's what we have in
Yeah.
testing right now. But the intent is that they're large, open, lots of different objectives and quests and activities you can do. One of them will be like joining up to fight big bosses, but that's not the only thing you can do. And you can do a lot of things solo as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am excited to see those start to grow as well. And the Witchwood as a sort of an environment, is that going to bleed into the red zones as well?
And we would have red zones that feature the Witchwood assets. In the red zones are handcrafted, meaning we would have an awesome artist make something very epic with things that our blue zone generation would have more trouble doing. Like one of our ideas for red zone is a city that is completely floating in the sky with all the bridges and stuff just hanging over nothing, and that's perfectly suited for a red zone that really needs to be handcrafted.
Yeah. We had a question in the chat about the little purple glittering lights, which Graham, you mentioned before.
Yeah.
In
So
Yeah,
this
can you
this
can you
is
find a spot for
this is
us?
a combination of two different things. So you saw in the concept art we have the fireflies of the Witchwood, and that is something we are going to be working on soon to get sort of the more real version of that in. But in the meantime, we wanted to get a little bit of that vibe somewhere in the game to see how players responded to it, and is it an exciting aspect of the environment here. Another one of our kind of systems, we talked a lot about exploration earlier, that exploring these spaces, because they're different every time, they're unique to you and your group, is a really big part of Ghost. Is okay, what can I see on the horizon? Where do I want to go? What cool things can I find and discover? So we have lore objects that we're currently calling discoveries that are a lot like when you find a journal page in your favorite RPG and can read a little bit of text from someone. Well, for us, they can be anything. They can be big statues, little weird mushrooms, journal pages certainly. And so we're showing those with the fireflies right now to try and kind of draw your attention and say, hey, come check this out. And because I'm in our sort of dev camera, I can't show it, but you walk up to one of these and you get a prompt that says, hey, interact with this, read something about it. And it's not just lore, we're also going to reward you for that, give you a little bit of, maybe it's XP, maybe it's currency, maybe it's a usable item unique to that discovery, but give you a little bit of both intrinsic and extrinsic reward for your exploration, and we're planning on having a lot of these. So tons and tons of discoveries. It'll be a lot of blue zones that you play before you see the same one again.
And I think
And
another part of this is for the lore nerds that really want to understand all the details and intricacies of the mysteries of the world and characters' histories. Like the discoveries are a great place to get these little small details out that maybe you only really understand if you've gone and put the effort in to find all of them.
we love a collection quest. I am absolutely that person that found all of the clovers in Okami. And I know there are other people out there too. So the minute you tell me that I can collect all of these and there might even be an achievement at the end or something similar, I will spend hours digging up every possible discovery I can. So I'm going to just put this to three of you. We did have a question from the chat, sort of two questions that are basically the same, which is like, how are we going to procedurally generate this, or is this all procedurally generated? And I know that we have some random elements, but that's not 100% of the game. Graham, Greg, Christina, do any
Yeah.
of you want to hop in?
So I love this question, and I love that earlier. Sorry, forgive me. I'm not going to do a ton of driving while I'm talking. Um,
That's fine.
Here, we'll have some pretty purple to look at. Uh, when we showed earlier the screenshot from August, because that map that we showed there was what we internally called a directed blue zone. So it was a handcrafted landscape, hand-placed creatures, handmade objectives, and it was very directional for us of like, okay, this is what we want blue zones to play and feel and look like. Let's make a handcrafted version feel good, and then kind of work backwards and figure out how do we procedurally generate these sorts of things. This map we're on today is also a directed blue zone. We call this our Witchwood visual showcase, and its original intent was actually just for the art team to sort of get a feel for what should the Witchwood look and feel like. Let's get the trees in looking all gnarly and awesome. Let's figure out how much purple we want in them. Let's see what our landscape should look like. What are the mountains and the shaggy hills shaped like? And on the design side, when we saw that coming together, we went, wait a second, this is a great opportunity for us to do another directed zone and add gameplay elements and have another round of like really powerful kind of learning for us. So everything you're seeing right here is hand placed by game designers, put on the map to be how we want it to be eventually. The discovery at the top of this mountain that you need to find your way up this ridge and then somehow climb up to. Well, that's a great moment when you get up there and get that lore, get those rewards. Playing this with our players and seeing their reaction and how do they move through the space, what excites them, what do they ignore, gave us a ton of like really useful information and learnings about, okay, when we try to procedurally generate this, what are the most important things for us to focus on? What are the things that we thought might be important but ended up being take it or leave it, don't spend time on that yet. So yes, while this is all handcrafted, for us it is now our next target for, okay, let's procedurally generate all of these things.
I like how
I
you
feel the need to
mentioned.
point out that while all the terrain is ours, some of the creatures you see walking around are just stock Unreal assets.
Yes,
Like
this
these
is a
elementals.
mishmash.
We don't even have elementals in our game. And not only that, but they're just kind of doing the standard MMO, like wander one direction, turn around and wander another direction. We want all of our creatures to look a little more intentional, even when they're just kind of moving around the space.
Mhm.
Um, and I like how you mentioned watching our players sort of explore the environment, because one thing we have noticed with our testers, at least, is that they love to climb on top of things, which I think is such a classic MMO response to seeing tall thing. I want to climb up on top of that and get a good view of the world. So we've had our testers build ramps up to the top of this tower that Graham is looking at. We've had them build ramps up to in a different test. We had a sort of a crystal in the sky that was really just supposed to be sort of a fun wayfinding feature, and instead they built this giant ramp up to it. It's turned into this like very funny sort of
Cult of the
player, like
Crystal,
yeah, the cult of the crystal.
one of our early memes.
One of the best parts of that is, do you see the bridge in the distance here? Our players have been so like trained now to build things that they built a ramp up to this cliff edge, and then when they got to the top, they saw there was already a bridge. We're like, oh, okay.
Oh. but I wanted to do it.
Their bridge
All
was
right, so
better.
yeah, that's true. As Graham drives us around and takes a little bit of a dive, why don't we go into the forest? Graham, can we go into the forest?
We can totally go into the forest. The dark,
Yes.
spooky
Okay.
forest.
Dark spooky forest. So, Christina, I have a question for you. How much of this is final? How much of this is going to look like this in the game when it ships?
Remember, the
None.
artists may be listening to the stream.
Yeah, none. The artists have made me say that. So look, I think this is absolutely gorgeous, but it's missing many of the final touches and the pieces of polish, right? And a big part of games this early is you put it all together and you see how it works together and then you iterate. Like that is one of the magic parts of partnering with players this early is we can show them this, we can get their feedback we have, and then we take that back and say, okay, based on this feedback, what do we want to make better? I think especially for Witchwood, what you're seeing now is, as we just talked about, like that plant is not our plant.
It does have a lot of
So
teeth, though.
it
It
does
has a
have
lot
a
of
lot of
teeth.
teeth, so it's in the right direction. But I think like really getting all of the assets or the monsters, the plants, the rocks, everything to be ours, and then starting to build towards, okay, what is the most important to polish here? Small visual effects. There's not really a lot of sound in this map, which doesn't matter for this stream, but almost nothing is final. But we're working on what we call like kind of proxies are in now. And we can use those proxies to understand gameplay better. And then when we iterate on them, we're iterating towards a wonderful experience and not just it looks good or it plays good, but both together.
And this forest actually is a great example of that. When Art was working on this, kind of their first pass, you see all these rocks here. They call that scree, and there was a ton of it throughout the forest, which gave it this really like again sort of dark, spooky, overgrown feeling. But it made it really hard to run through. And so, doing just an internal playtest, going through the forest, we're like, this looks awesome, but I keep having to hop up on these rocks. So they kind of went back and pulled some of them out. They're still there, they still give the vibe, but it made the map much more playable. And so this whole experience is a very useful tool for us to find that balance of how do we get spooky northern forest, but also a really great gameplay experience.
I mean, I think it looks spectacular. I can see it through. Ooh,
Hey, buddy.
spoilers, Graham. Careful.
We have a race of tree creatures in the game. They look super cool. This is not them. These are
not them.
more Unreal Marketplace art.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's actually been one of the things that's been really helpful for us. Instead of plopping a bunch of people to test gameplay in what is essentially just checkerboard floors and gray boxes, and we say, just imagine that there's a creature here. We can approximate a lot with the Unreal Marketplace assets, which has been really, really useful for us. That all being said, it's been so much fun to see things that are ours, things that are going to be uniquely Ghost, start to sort of populate the game. And that's another part of like why we wanted to focus on the Witchwood as a singular environment first, as a biome, because that helps us sort of learn a little bit about the ways we want to build other biomes in the future. This all being said, since it's not final, where is the Witchwood going to go next? What are you excited about for the way that this biome in this forest is going to grow metaphorically and literally?
I'm personally really excited to bring the spooky vibe up a notch. I love the haunted forest kind of feeling in the concept art. And we have lots of exciting ideas, like many more fireflies, many more, scary creatures that you're risking your life if you want to go near them, but maybe they have great rewards.
Yeah. I'm excited for that too. I think more exploratory gameplay and gameplay that like in that way kind of challenges you to be like, "Ooh, I dare you. I dare you to find more," right? Are you I don't know, Chad, if you were exploring a spooky forest, would you delve deeper or would you be like, "No, I've seen this movie. I'm leaving."
I'm sure that treasure chest is fine, right, Greg?
Oh yeah, we don't have
Oh,
many mimics
totally.
in the game.
Yeah. Why would a mimic be in a forest? That's ridiculous.
Is it
Why
moving?
indeed? Why indeed? Seeing a lot of people say, I would absolutely go deeper into the forest. Love that for us.
Fantastic. Good.
That's exactly what we want to hear.
Looking forward to, more density of trees, a lighting pass. Like, we still want to have the sun shining, but maybe only in places, or maybe you come into a clearing and the sun is there and it's kind of a welcome sight. We don't want it to be so dark that it's hard to navigate or see things, but I think we could take that a notch. I'm also really looking forward to getting our creatures, some of the ones we showed earlier on. We have a few of our creatures in the game now, and we need to get a lot more.
Yeah, I'll see if I can head over towards the one that we have in this map, but totally agreed. Like what our team is doing and the combat team to make our creatures come to life, getting those in the game, like just makes it feel so much more Ghost. It's so much more exciting. The marketplace assets we've been using have been extremely helpful. I'm very thankful that those are out there for us to prototype with, but looking forward to getting that Ghost feel throughout the game.
Yeah.
Are you going to the Cratch? Can I do a dump of Cratch lore?
Yeah.
Are you going to say something?
Spoilers! Greg,
Before you get
spoilers!
there, I think Greg referenced this a little bit earlier, but I'm also really excited to start building out the different groups in the Witchwood. So every biome will have their different kinds of people. And I won't go deep into this kind of people, but Greg could do that next. But the people have interactions between each other, right? They are groups that have different perspectives, different motivations, different goals. And I think that will really make each biome feel really unique and each map feel really unique because of what factions might spawn on it.
Okay, well, because you are the game director and studio head, I suppose if you want to do a dump of Cratch lore, I can't by rights call that a leak. That's just an announcement.
So first off, ignore the little green guys. They're not part of our IP. But these spooky purple gentlemen, probably can't see them in the stream quality, but they actually have 4 eyes. As you might imagine, they kind of fill our humanoid niche. Like, you need something like orcs or goblins to fight that are kind of, you can kind of see the eyes there. They're mean, they're scary, they're brutal.
They also have a lot of teeth.
They have a lot of teeth, and there's a reason for that. We won't show it today, but we also have a race of beautiful antlered people called the Kissawan. And long ago, some evil folk took the Kissawan and wanted to create a race of super soldiers out of them. And so instead of the beautiful Kissawan antlers, they have these almost like ram-like horns. And the Cratch are very resentful of the fact that they were created from the Kissawan, and they hate the Kissawan, so they break off their own horns almost in protest, so they can kind of erase as much connection as they have to the beautiful race from where they were spawned. So they're kind of used by a lot of powerful entities as thugs, as super soldiers. The axe is not real. The axe is stand-in, but and even the creature modeled animations are early on, but it kind of gives you a sense of where we're going with our art style.
So are these Cratch models done then, or are we going to see these grow as well?
These are
They
far
will
from
grow as
done.
well for sure. This is very early.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Super early in our internal builds. We have 3 different Cratch. We have these guys. We have a smaller one we call the Cratch Fist that is more of their workhorse unit, and then the Cratch Hill Chewer, which is a big brute that can actually pick up trees and hit you with them.
I want a special Cratch character though called the Purple Gentleman.
Ooh, top hat,
Okay,
monocle,
well,
etc.
I am gonna write that down and send it to Shanti. I was probably actually watching the stream. Shanti, Purple Gentleman. So you know. One of the things that I've really enjoyed about kind of being a part of this experience from early on, typically community managers don't come in until much later in development, is getting to see the way the biomes are planned out. So we actually did a really fun exercise at one of our offsites, my first offsite that Greg led, that we all got to ideate and then decide what biomes we were most interested in together. Greg, where did that idea to lead that come from? I really enjoyed that.
We were at a part of development where we had software and we had some stuff in the game, but something I wasn't expecting is that the team kind of had trouble feeling like anything was real. Everything felt stand-in. We weren't sure what player races we'd have. We weren't kind of sure what enemy races we'd have yet. And so I really wanted to do an activity with the whole studio to try to say like, hey team, we're going to come out of this meeting and we're going to commit to which biomes we're going to launch. I think people were surprised that we would be so bold to take a stand that early. So we prepared a whiteboard with lots of different potential biomes, and I'm sure we'll use some of the others in the future when we need more. And we just talked through them as a group of like, what are the opportunities here? You know, what do we like? And we even voted. I said early on that the vote wouldn't necessarily be binding, but we ended up liking the 3 biomes we picked. Like I said, the Witchwood was the top choice, and it just felt like a fairly good one to start with because it was beautiful, but not so high concept that we would have trouble, you know, wrapping our head around it. And yeah, we'll use some of those other biomes in the future. And we've done that a few more times. We've had brainstorms with the whole studio about things like classes and creatures. It's, you know, you don't want to group think designs. Like if you vote on everything, you end up with something that's you know, kind of mushy in the middle. Someone likes green and someone likes purple, so every monster has to be green and purple. Like that's not what we're going for. But when the team can kind of all get excited about something, then maybe, you know, maybe you're onto something and you want to pursue that a little more.
And it can be scary to make that like commitment so early, but it's also really, really helpful because we'll have design discussions about the systems or monsters or any sort of content and be like, well, you know, something like this or something like that, or maybe we could do this, but at some point you need to build the darn thing. And so having a nope, this is the one we're building, and maybe we'll be wrong. Maybe we won't like it. But we've all of us have done this a couple times. We have a good sense of what we like and what don't. So we can make a good first guess at least. And you know, if it doesn't work out, we'll make something else, and that's okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's one of the beautiful parts of doing all of this open development with having testers and then being able to show this to y'all is that we get to take all of your responses and kind of go back, you know, and go back to our meeting rooms and say, okay, well, this was really popular. This is something that really excited people. And, you know, maybe this wasn't as interesting to folks. And that doesn't necessarily mean we always go with one or the other, but it does mean we start to think about why, right? I could obsess about player feedback for hours. So we're not going to get into that right now. But yeah, oh my
Weaponize
gosh.
all of the players clearly being in love with mimics to argue that we should add a lot more to the game.
Yes, if you want more mimics in the game, be sure to say so, and then we will totally not skew that data in favor of mimics. All right. So actually I do have one more question for you. Graham, is it still possible for testers to throw themselves off of the side of the floating islands and get 25 XP?
Absolutely not. No. You will die, you will get no XP, and we're talking about things we can take away from you if you do that. So,
You have a great view, so you might still want to do it once.
yeah, do it once. But if you do it a second time, I'm going to start deleting characters from your player name.
Oh. You lose the vowels.
Yeah,
right?
vowels first,
And
for
then
sure.
like the defining consonants, and then you're just sort of left with like L's. Like, oh, I think that's hysterical. I think we should do that. Let's do that. I'm gonna add that to my
In all
make
seriousness,
that
like
note for player support.
that is a wonderful thing about us playtesting so early is like not just finding those bugs, but like that's a great story, right? That is a wonderful moment in development and a good reminder for us of, you know, what are the sorts of things we need to be thinking about early and what's okay. And I don't know. I'm very happy players did that. I think it was hilarious. I did want to fix it afterwards, but like cool. Like to me, it shows that players are excited to explore our world, right?
Yeah,
And that's really cool.
yeah.
It's
We've
also a
had some.
good illustration of why we want playtesters now, but we can't open the doors to thousands of playtesters because we haven't focused on all the bulletproofing you need to have like a really good experience when people are like really poking at the boundaries and trying to break the game. And we'll get there as things get more stable, as we lock stuff down a little bit more and fix the most egregious exploits, then we'll be able to open up playtesting to larger and larger groups.
Yeah. And also when we can kind of build out that server capacity as well, there's a technical limitation that a lot of early games are looking at where it's like we can only have this many people in the game. So I would say right now, especially like with server capacity, I would call us a little multiplayer online roleplay game. but
is
we are
true, but
building out.
I do want to shout out to we made an early investment
We did, yeah.
in engineers because we knew that we were making a client server game. We needed a game that could support lots of people. We had a game with fairly complicated terrain, and I think that has really paid off. Our development environment is very stable. We joked about crashing, but it's actually really unlikely compared to the prototypes I've been on for previous titles. So honestly, the game would look even better if we had over-indexed on art early, but we made the hopefully wise choice of over-indexing on engineering.
Yeah, absolutely. I think shout out to our engineering team. They are absolutely incredible. And we are able to do things like this and show you a live, coast through, fly through of the Blue Zone because we have stable enough servers to do this early. I think that's amazing. All right, so we have about 15 minutes left of this stream, and I do want to make sure that we have time. We've got a lot of questions in chat, and I want to make sure we have time to answer some of those. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to keep an eye on both. We are live on YouTube and we're live on Twitch. I'm going to keep an eye on both chats. I'm going to do my best to make sure we get to as many questions as possible. If you have more, you can always bring those to podcasts. There is a really wonderful community-run fan Discord that some of the devs hang out in. Shanti and I are both in there, for example. We could try to answer questions there as well. So if you don't get your question answered today, we will find time to get to it. Just want to let you know. That all being said, we have 3 wonderful developers here. Well, I suppose 4. I can answer questions too. And we would love to know what you want to know about Ghost. So let's see. Oh, I do have a very funny question from our YouTube chat, which is, the forest is good, but the question is, will any of us live to see the release? So MMOs are a very, very difficult genre of game to develop, and they are often kind of infamous for taking a very long time. Greg, I know you have some big feelings about this one. What do you think? Will any of us live to see the release of Ghost?
Honestly, the reason I wanted to get away from a giant studio was because giant studios are kind of slow. And I loved Blizzard and I loved Riot, and they were both great experiences, but I really wanted to start our own studio so we could move a little faster. And I think we are equipped to move much faster than typical MMO development. The fact that we've gotten so much playable in a year, I think, is telling. So I would get in a lot of trouble if I tried to predict a date at this point, but it's not going to be the kind of thing where you're reading about this for.
Yeah. I mean, if this is what 1 year of development really looks like on one biome, I am so excited to see what happens a year from today. We do have a question about the Witchwood from Stretch in our Twitch chat. What weather types are we thinking of for the Witchwood? And this is actually a really interesting question. What do we want to do with weather in Ghost?
Stina, you want to take that one?
Yeah, so we're still exploring exactly what we want to do with weather, but each biome should have its own kind of specific events that happen that change how the world is expressed, how different creatures act, how different environment, like maybe mushrooms, grow bigger in a rainstorm or something. So in Witchwood, the thing we're the most excited about is fireflies. So this isn't a standard weather event because we've all seen rain before, but what if there's a firefly migration? And that's actually the thing that changes over time and changes how the game feels, how the world looks. In Tempest Desert, Greg had just described a storm. So that's an example of, it's not just a standard weather effect, it's a weather effect that impacts gameplay. What we're really excited about is when these kinds of dynamic effects can change the way a player might approach a point of interest in the game, or a different goal might be around because a dynamic effect is happening in the environment. Why we like those is because it changes the gameplay up and makes players kind of pivot to, oh, this thing's happening now, that's really exciting, I can go do this objective that I maybe couldn't do before. Or maybe there's a chance of higher loot when you're chasing a storm, right? So we're excited for exploring those kinds of weather effects, but we're still pretty early on, so I can't tell you exactly what they would be.
And it's one of those things where, with blue zones being procedurally generated and different every time, we don't want to give you an explicit, like, go to point A, then point B, then point C, then you're done, right? Exploration is a really big part of the experience. And so these environmental events like the Firefly migration or the Tempest Desert Storms, we think is going to be really powerful for players to be able to set their own goals of, okay, I've kind of seen some of the stuff that's on this shard. I know that I want to accomplish this thing over here, but I know a Firefly migration is happening soon, and I've played enough Witchwood to understand that that's going to make these resources available or this type of enemy ecology, go to sleep or whatever it might be. So how am I going to plan for that? How do players kind of express knowledge and mastery over the environment as they've learned all of the effects of these weather patterns?
I don't know. I think weather is one of those things that can really make MMOs feel alive. Everything from like, oh, different fish come out when it's raining to, wow, a sandstorm in the Tempest Desert has uncovered this ruin that you can now go explore that might not be in other blue zones or red zones or, sorts of things. That's the kind of thing that I'm personally really excited about. We do have a great question from our YouTube chat, which is, oh my gosh. Oh, you each had a preference concept of a zone. Which were each of yours? Was the Witchwood one of your fours? So for me, I can tell you I was really, really excited about the Witchwood, but my number one was actually the Manta Isles. I think I live in a place that's fairly gray and rainy, and so whenever, a tropical area sort of presents itself, I'm just like, oh yes, vacation, please. I'm also super excited about the biodiversity that tropical beaches like present the opportunity to show different, kinds of fish and coral and Greg's talking about flying manta rays and things. That's the kind of thing where I'm like, I know if I get the opportunity to like find a place to put my player house, maybe it's gonna be in the Manta Isles. We'll find out, right? So,
Mine
what
was
were your
definitely,
top choices?
yeah, mine was definitely Witchwood, like a
Yeah.
hauntingly beautiful forest every day. Let's build that
Oh,
first, get it
funny
out of
that
our
it ended up
system.
in the game, Christina, because the EP wanted it.
Funny how that works, yeah.
As it turns out, when you are the executive producer, you actually get to make the game that you want to make. That's the cool part about being that, right? You get to make the game that's in your head.
For me, Tempest Desert, like of our first three, like I like desert landscapes in games. I think they're really hard to do well, right? Some games you'll play and it's like, yeah, it's sand, like it's dunes and sand and it's boring. But seeing the concept art and the ideas for the Tempest Desert, how it's not just sand, it's got these huge towering mountains and lightning striking them at the top and causing flames to shoot out, and the idea of chasing the storms, uncovering ruins, like you said, Faye, like to me, I was just
Mhm.
like adventuring through that, having that danger, but the excitement of seeing something. And Tempest Desert for me all the way. I can't wait to get in that one.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm also really excited about the Tempest Desert. Some of the concept art that we've shown on the blog previously also had like things like a giant pit in the ground that had what suspiciously looked like teeth coming out from the sides. There's all sorts of opportunities we have when
Weird
we've
through line of this stream. I don't know.
teeth. Yeah, our environment so far, I mean, the Manta Isles hasn't had as much teeth
Let's
in
keep it that
the
way.
concept art. I mean,
What
I
if
don't
the
know.
secret of the drift is it's all one big mimic?
Greg, you said you wouldn't spoil the lore.
I mean, I
All
just came
right,
up with
rewrite
that,
the
so it's hot off the
story.
presses.
Shanti's listening to the stream like, oh my god.
The biome I was really pulling for, which did not make the cut. I got really excited about a biome where there were no normal trees. Everything was fungus. Everything was mushrooms. So you'd have almost coral-looking things underfoot, and instead of giant trees, you'd have giant mushrooms, and everything was kind of psychedelic colored and bioluminescent, and even the creatures you'd encounter were like little mushroom people. And the team, there were people on the team who were like, mushrooms are really creepy. I don't want a whole mushroom biome. So maybe someday we'll bring it back. I was kind of sad that one didn't make the cut.
Well, we can do more biomes in the future. It's like I
We'll
said,
have to. If this game is
when you're the
successful, we'll
game
crank them
director.
out every expansion or so.
Yeah, that's true. So, we're gonna do a little bit of like a wait, don't tell me lightning round of questions here very quickly. So I'm gonna just start throwing questions at people a little bit. How does that sound? All right, from Mika, we have a question. Did cats make it into the game yet? Have we modeled any cats into the game? Christina, have we modeled any cats in the game?
Soon.
Soon.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Very soon.
Yeah. Will there be, we've had a couple questions about this and I'm happy to answer them. Will there be a dev stream in the future about classes and combat, about red zones? Yes, we do want to do more dev streams. In fact, we're planning on doing more dev streams. We're working out exactly what we're going to have ready to show off within the next couple of months for our next couple of streams like this. Once we determine that, we can figure out our schedule, figure out what we're going to show. But basically, if you guys want to see things, yes, we are happy to find ways to show that off. We don't have a red zone fully developed out right now, so probably not that until we work on them. But combat.
Otherwise,
that
it's
is
just us
something we're talking
talking, and
about.
we can't show you anything, which gets a little boring.
Well, we do. It's called the pod. That's our podcast. We do that.
Good
That's
point, good
that's the
point.
podcast. Right. So So we have that. There is a podcast. You can go listen to that too. How big of a role will be relegated to PvP? Greg.
We want PvP in Ghost. We think that is it's fun. It's important to a lot of players, and it really helps the longevity of these games because players are unpredictable. We think that both blue zones and red zones have a lot of opportunity there, where one of my favorite pitches, which we haven't tried yet, is a blue zone where there's like two teams competing to kind of get to the end. And one of the things you can do to slow the other team down is attack them. We are less likely to do kind of organized, WoW style arenas where it's very much about small group and balance and kind of, pillar humping and that sort of thing. We'll probably do more larger scale, and we really will emphasize fun over like very tight balance. Like we're not going for esports level here.
Yeah. I personally prefer more chaotic PvP. I think that's a lot of fun. So, question, will blue zones be the focus of MSQ, gear drops, etc.? Is that going to happen in blue zones or is it going to happen in red zones? And similarly, is character gearing going to be repeatable? Like you have to gear up at the start of every blue zone, or is that the kind of thing where you kind of have a best in slot and it just stays there until you find a new best in slot? Christina, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, so ideally, our plan is that you are gearing up, you are leveling in both blue zones and red zones. So we want the main storyline to take you kind of weaving through, a blue zone here, then go back to the city. Now you're going to a red zone, now you're going to a couple blue zones. We're still working out exactly how that flow would work. But it's also kind of up to players. Like as you explore through the story, you'll unlock more and more different maps you could go to. So it might be up to you if you want to just spend a day in red zones, that could be possible. So what that means is that rewards then have to be spread across all of these different zones in different ways to, one, make sure you're gearing up appropriately throughout the main story quest, but also kind of compel you, like, oh, your belt, I forget if we have belts, your belt needs an upgrade. Where do you get the next upgrade for that? Or where do you get the gemstone to upgrade your next gem? Like, that will be spread around as well, so that you kind of have to go to all these different kinds of zones. But hopefully you like doing that and it doesn't feel bad to you. What was the second part of that question?
In blue zone progression.
Yeah.
In blue zone progression. Graham, do you want to take that one?
Sure, yeah. So to answer the question that was stated, no, you don't have to gear up every blue zone. Your character is permanent progression, like your favorite MMO. The gear you have, you bring with you to each blue zone and take with you when you leave. When you are in a blue zone, though, we do want there to be a sense of power progression within that play session, within that shard, so that when you arrive on the blue zone, you can't immediately do everything there. That there's a reason for you to explore and complete objectives and find things that give you more power. So we're going to be doing that in a couple different ways. A lot of these are still very, very early, and we're exploring, and we'll iterate on them as we go. One is a sort of direct power growth of there's this substance throughout blue shards currently called manarite that is bad for blue shards, it's bad for the environment, it's bad for everyone, but as players you can collect it, and by absorbing it you make the shard less dangerous, which makes you more powerful and makes all the enemies a little bit weaker. So before you take on that final boss that you showed up to kill, you might want to go clean up some of that manarite first as you're doing other objectives. Then the second part is the content on Blue Shards has a lot of potential capabilities and power for you to unlock by exploring. You might delve into a ruin and find a divine sword that is locked to this shard, but you can wield it while you're here. You might find an altar that if you sacrifice or gift something to it will give you a huge power boost while you're on this shard. So those things being a lot more less numerical. Maybe you find a blueprint for a really special ramp that takes you really, really far or really high up in the air, but giving you additional tools and utility capabilities within this shard that is locked to the space, also being a form of kind of in-zone progression. So yeah, a mix of all three of those.
All right. Graham, I
You
am
thought
gonna
that was going to be a lightning round, Faye?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I know. Actually, that
It's a
was
big question.
lightning for us,
Yeah.
right? There's so much that we're still working on. As it turns out, when you are making a game, as one of my favorite game designers says, nobody told me that when you make a game, you have to make the whole thing. We're gonna end. I see so many questions in the chat that are absolutely spectacular about mounts, about healing classes, which is near and dear to my heart as a healer main, about snow, about all sorts of things. We are coming to the end of our stream for today. Please hold these questions, either bring them to the fan Discord or save them for the next one or the next podcast episode. We hope to see you all there. We're going to end on one more question. And Greg, that is for you. How are the chickens?
They're good. It is June
Yeah.
bug season here in Texas. So every night with lots and lots of bugs bang against the windows. And then every morning I shovel a ton of beetles into the coop. So the girls are very fat and happy.
Oh, well, I'm sure they're thrilled right now. And that's actually a really good way of like keeping pest develop like under control if you're gardening and stuff like that too. All right. Friends, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you have a wonderful Friday or time zone wherever it is that you are. Before we head off, I just want to give a shout out and thank you to our stream manager Solomon. Thank you so much for working with us to put this on today. Our mod Anner, who's been spectacular in both chats, and John as well, our VP of business, who's been hanging out with you on the fantastic Pixel Castle accounts. We are going to do more of these, timing TBD. Keep an eye on our socials to see when we announce them. Until next time, this has been Fantastic Pixel Castle. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.